Wow!
Oh no, my interview's in 5 minutes. I'm coming.
Hello friends! Today in our program is a very talented composer from England, Robert Stephen Hunt. He has been composing piano music since he was a teenager. He only began sharing his original compositions on the internet since April 2010. During these years, he built a loyal following of fans from around the world. This is what his fans tell about his music. It's very relaxing, soothing, calming, harmonious, and healing. Thank you, Robert, for joining our program. And I'm happy and so excited to ask you the first question. What place has music had in your life in the past? And what place has it in your life right now?
Thank you, Aelita, for inviting me along to this show. I feel quite honoured, really, to be honest. So all the way through my life, I've been using music in whatever capacity, whatever hobbies or interests I've had. I really included music in a lot of the projects, and eventually produced a pilot TV program called Unbelievers.
We'll answer your questions then. You need to go now, or you'll miss the race. Good luck.
Hi. You found it? Yeah, no trouble.
Managed you some raffle tickets. Money's going to St Stephen's Churches Centre in London.
The creativity is kind of like part of my DNA. It's who I am. Yeah, music has always played a really major part in my life. The only time that I think music failed in a spectacular way was when I went to college, and I had the choice of either having geography, music, or drama and television studies. I went for an interview to the music department at college and played some of my music, but the principal in the music department wasn't that very impressed with my music, and he said, "No, I don't think you're suited to the music department at all. You'll never achieve anything in music whatsoever."
Never say that to a student.
However, ironically, my very first teaching post happened to be teaching music. So I think sometimes, there's a sense of humour sometimes happens when we actually live out our lives. And I always find that's quite an amusing story that I ended up teaching music in my very first job. While I was teaching, I also joined a drama group, which was really focusing on teenagers and young children. And I was with that group for about 30 years. And during that time, I helped with productions and was particularly really their musical director for many of their shows. And one of the things I learned while I was producing those shows is that I was able to improvise music on the spot. And after a while, after many years, they would turn around to me and say, you really, really ought to do something about your music because it's really incredibly good. It's a waste if you don't do anything. So this was a real encouragement to me, and I kept that idea in my mind for many, many years, thinking, well, how do I possibly go ahead with this? And of course, in those days, the internet really did not exist. I did try sending tapes off to recording companies, but I would imagine that they ended up in a very big pile somewhere of rejects. But now, of course, we live in a completely different world, and the internet can give rise to musical stars and stars of all kinds of genres, really. So we live in a completely different world and mindset now. And of course, I had lots of other dreams as well, apart from the music. I did a lot of acting. I did a lot of directing as well. And around the same time that I was sharing my music, I also started being involved writing TV scripts. Music is keeping me sane, I think. I love to just go along to the piano and just play pieces of music, my own pieces, my own creations. It just gives me a really good vibe, good feeling inside. And since the lockdown started, I found new ways online of sharing my music. I was invited to play my compositions outside a large church in the centre of town in Reading, where I live in the UK. It was a real time of healing and blessing for everyone. I'm just finding new and creative ways of sharing it. I'm also involved in another group called 24/7 in Reading, but playing my music over someone who's creating a piece of art, a painting. And that was a really powerful experience to watch two different art forms coming together and being broadcast over the internet. So yeah, there are new ways that I'm finding and discovering of sharing my music, even though the circumstances at the moment are quite challenging and difficult. Yeah, music has always played a really major part in my life.
Do you really believe that music will save this world?
Yes, you're asking whether music can really save the world. I think music is such a powerful force. And when you think about it, it really is the only true international language which can cover the whole of our planet. Wherever you play a piece of music, people can understand it. They don't need words. The music can create so many emotions. It can make you happy, it can make you sad, it can make you cry, it can make you excited. It's such a powerful force, and I think music can be used in a really positive way to change the atmosphere. People are feeling very depressed. You can bring a real sense of enjoyment through listening to a piece of music. I think it almost has healing qualities as well. So it can be very soothing, very relaxing. And in our very fast-paced world, and now with COVID as well, the pandemic, I think music is a great healing force. I know a lot of my fans like to listen to the music, to soak in the music and just enjoy the vibrations, the frequencies, however you want to describe them. But they just enjoy getting lost in the music, and it takes them on a journey. It takes them away from the humdrumness of life. And so, yeah, I think it's just such an important thing to have music, that creative force in all of our lives.
When you were a child, what was your biggest dream?
My biggest dream, I can remember when I was sitting in my front room as a teenager, and I was playing on the piano, and I would dream of having my music in the top 10. And I would play short sections of my music and gradually work my way up from 10 up to number 1. But I never really understood that kind of vision or dream I had until very recently, when in 2010 I started exploring the internet and sharing my music for the very first time. And I found myself having music played on different charts, on different music websites. And indeed, I have found myself in various different positions in the UK, even right up to the number 1 position, both in Reverbnation, which is a music website, and more recently in number1music.com. So little did I know as a child that I was looking into the future, that through the internet I have managed to achieve that goal, but I'm still want to get on to the really big charts on iTunes and a lot of the other streaming and download charts. That's my next goal.
Some psychologists believe that it is especially important to have dreams at any age and work toward them. But in real life, this does not always happen. Only a few people actually are able to accomplish their dreams. The majority must do something, majority of people, that they do not really like in order to make a living. Why do you think this happens?
It's a case really of the reality of living and the reality of life kicks in. And you've got to find ways of making money, of paying the bills. And yes, you can have those dreams, but often you have to face the fact that you have to do a job that you may not necessarily like. And perhaps for a while, your dream is only really some kind of hobby, for example. So you don't really achieve everything right in the very beginning. If I look back on my own time, I only had a few music lessons. I only went up to about roughly grade 1, but never actually took any exams. So all my music throughout my time has been more or less self-taught. I owe a lot to the church because as I was a teenager and growing up, I was invited to play the piano at a Sunday school and also in church as well. And that kind of gave me the reason for learning new pieces of music. And each week I would concentrate on a piece of music and then play it in the church the following week. And gradually, of course, I built up a lot of skills over the years. I didn't realize it at first, but it very, very gradually improved. My skills improved. The type of music I was able to play improved. I was starting off maybe with very easy key signatures to play in, and gradually they got more and more complicated. However, if I see 4 or 5 sharps or flats, I still scream even now. So,
Other people will get inspired by your story, because I'm sure everyone has that feeling inside. It's just how much do they listen to their inner voice, go and play piano or go to draw a painting or do something creative, right? Sometimes we just don't want to listen our inner voice and do something that we not intended to do. The music industry is an incredibly competitive and ruthless business. Often managers, concert promoters, and producers take advantage of their artists, exploiting them and not really looking after their best interests. We have many examples in history, and Michael Jackson and Elvis Presley and many others, name it. Right now, most of the artists are going through a particularly challenging time. Do you think that music artists will be able to recover economically, or will many of them have to choose an alternative day job in order to keep earning money and consider music more as a hobby? What do you think?
We are living in really difficult times at the moment. And for many musicians, their income stream has just completely dried up. Because obviously things like theatres are no longer open, concert halls are no longer open. And I know a number of my musician friends are finding all sorts of different ways of trying to use the internet to share their music. But it's very difficult at the moment. And the industry really is, quite a ruthless one. And I think a lot of people have got to find alternative ways, sadly, of making a living. Promises of a job don't pay the mortgage, unfortunately, and of course that's very important. We need to live, we need to feed our families, we need things to buy in life, quite literally. So it's a very difficult and challenging time at the moment. So I know a lot of people are having to put their careers on hold for a while. I know my own album, The Edge of Time, the second album, is very much on hold really at the moment, because it was about to be launched on the weekend when lockdown really began. So my launch party got cancelled within 24 hours of it going ahead. And I had to find other ways of going on Facebook and on social media to spread the word that the album was now launched. It's a difficult time in our history, I think. Creative people are having to be even more creative in the ways they make money, but I do firmly believe that the pandemic will not last forever. There will be an end to it. I also think that when the pandemic is over, people will turn to music, to creativity, to films, to theatre in a completely new way. That there'll be almost like a new thirst for it. Because we've been deprived for so many months, it makes the joy of hearing a new piece of music. And it's so important in these difficult times for raising the mood of people and their general well-being. I think music is, as I said at the beginning of the interview, a really powerful tool. And if we use it wisely, it does have very healing qualities.
Truly, talent can break through any circumstances. We all know about the competition in the music industry. How to survive, how to find your audience, especially right now in the world after coronavirus. What is your advice to especially young artists?
First of all, keep trying your very best at everything that you actually do. Try and excel in the genre that you've chosen. When you're trying to find your audience, I think it's really important to know what your music is like, what kind of an audience is likely to want to listen to it, and target and aim your promotion and strategy towards that particular audience area. So personally for me, I know that classical crossover is a big genre that certainly is attracted by the style of music that I play. But I think it crosses over into other genres as well. So it could be described as relaxing music, inspirational music, soaking music, healing music. I think there are a number of different titles that you can actually give to it. You do need to focus on one area. That's very, very true, because you need to have that discipline of being known for music in that particular genre. However, in my experience, the way that people listen to music now has changed over the years. People no longer necessarily go and buy records or CDs. There's a lot more emphasis placed on downloads and streaming. And if you analyze the way that people choose the artists they listen to, they will pick and mix different tracks from different artists and may not necessarily want to listen to a whole album. When I was bringing out my latest album, Edge of Time, I was a little worried as to how I was going to market it, because it seemed to have a mixture of jazz, piano and orchestra, and it also has an orchestral suite at the end of it as well. So how do you market that? Because it's different areas of music. However, someone very clever pointed out to me that it's not actually a disadvantage to have that. It could well be that the album is groundbreaking. It's the new way of how people listen to music. By you can mix downloading a couple of tracks, say of jazz, a couple of tracks of piano and orchestra, and then just orchestral music together. Well, that's all in one place in my latest album, so they don't necessarily have to leave the artist in order to play music from all those three different types of genres.
If you had the power to restructure the music business model, what would you change in it?
Yes, what would I really like to change? I think the most important thing that I want to change in the music industry is the way that musicians are paid for their skills and talents, and also composers as well. We have a system at the moment when a lot of music is streamed and downloaded, and it just doesn't reflect the kind of skills that are needed to bring that music to the audience. Musicians are almost giving their music away completely free. So that's one area that I'd love to change, that musicians are paid a proper wage. That they're paid something for the music, not just being forced to give it away free. It's almost criminal when you think about it, that a musician or composer takes a lifetime to learn those skills and to try and work hard, hours and hours. I mean, the number of hours that you just take making an album alone, and then your track is played for something like about 1 penny. How long is it going to take to get the cost of your album back again? It's going to take years and years. So yeah, I'm fighting for real wages, I think, for musicians and composers.
I'm absolutely agree with you. Yes, it's definitely a big issue, because when we come to a doctor, to an attorney, that they cannot do our service for free, right? What would they say to us? We know what would they say. But when we talk about musician, it's something not worthy. I will allow myself to ask you a very dangerous question. I know not many people will take a risk to ask this. I know especially many young artists for very big charity organizations, and they still would choose from lots of those young artists to pick one to perform on one of their events for free, of course. What do you think about this situation? Is this healthy situation? They have millions of dollars and they think that it's not worthy to pay a musician? What do you think about this?
It's so sad, isn't it, that they take for granted that that person who's performing, they've still got to eat themselves, they've still got to pay their bills. So why shouldn't they be paid? You know, as you say, if you went to a solicitor, you definitely would have to pay for their services and their skills. And a musician is no different. If you went to a theatre and you said, oh, I want a free theatre ticket, please, I don't want to pay anything for it. You've got all those people, the stage staff, the actors, the musicians, they're all going to say, well, where am I going to get paid from then? Who's going to pay me the money at the end of the month? So, yeah, you've got to be fair, I think, and pay for what it's worth.
How to these young artists actually can create a value of what they're doing?
It's a long, hard road when you're starting off, and you've really got to show incredible dedication, and you've got to try and show your skills off to as wide an audience as you possibly can, obviously, and sometimes you do have to do things perhaps for free, but there comes a point where I think you need to start working with other people who are on the same wavelength or same frequency as you, and you begin to sort of share ideas with like-minded people. I think that's the key really to success. I've certainly found it in my musical career that it's collaboration with others that really brings that strength of development and starts moving you forward. You feed off other people and other people feed off of you. It's a shared experience. So I think if you try and do things on your own and you are just simply moving from one sort of gig to another, or from one sort of session of playing your music without really trying to better yourself each time, then it really slows your progress down, and it really does make life very, very difficult. And a lot of people obviously just give up after a while because they can't see any progression in what they're actually doing. But yeah, if you start working with people and collaborating, it's surprising how quickly you see your journey accelerating and your skills improving.
Do you think that classical music will survive as a genre, or will it disappear with the passing generations?
I happen to think that classical music has got a really good, strong future. Several reasons, really. I mean, one, if you look at a lot of modern film music, a lot of the composers use their theme music and incidental music very much based on classical music. And many people who go to the cinema listen to the soundtrack of a huge movie, and they listen to an orchestra playing in the background, and they don't realise that, in a way, they're listening to an offshoot of classical music. And you've got also really good composers who've made that form of music really acceptable and interesting. And John Williams, for example, with his Star Wars theme, just one example straight off my head, hugely popular amongst the cinematic audience, but using the style of classical music all the way through. And there are many artists as well, young artists who are making classical music look really cool. I mean, Lang Lang, for example, a wonderful pianist. He's playing classical piano music look incredibly cool. There's Michael Andreas, a Spanish young man, about 19 years of age, who was on the Spanish Has Got Talent series over in their country. And he did very well on that program as well. So I think with all of those, and even during lockdown, I watched a number of programs where children's orchestras have been coming together in their homes and playing instruments, classical instruments, playing together as one group and performing music together. I think classical music is alive and very well at the moment. I think it clearly shows there are youngsters coming up through the ranks who like classical music and who are quite happy to use that genre and to keep it alive. So it's got a good, strong future, I think, Aelita.
How important is the very first music teacher for a child and their love for music and their eventual decision to become a musician?
That first teacher, that first contact with music is just so vitally important. It's a difficult time, really. I think that teacher's got to be really encouraging, very sympathetic, very patient. I think that's really important. And just be dedicated to leading by example. Because you're quite right. That child could be deciding eventually to make music their career. So it's important to get it right at the very beginning. It's important to feel good. It's important to feel relaxed and to be able to learn in the best possible circumstances. And I remember going to my music teacher. She lived just literally around the corner from me, where I lived when I was a teenager. And I can remember this kindly old lady who was teaching me how to play the piano, and I've never forgotten those skills. The person in front of you could end up being a massive star. They could be internationally famous. You just don't know. So you've got to treat everyone equally and with the same enthusiasm. There was a student of mine who, when I was teaching a week of film studies, and we went and produced this film over a whole week. And I remember Ben was very enthusiastic during that filming, but I didn't know how much of an influence I would have on his life, because later on he decided that filming was going to be for him. That was his career, 100%. That's what he was going to do in life. He now owns his own stunt company, and he is a stunt performer, and he's been performing in a number of big Hollywood movies. He was the stunt double for Matt Damon in the Jason Bourne movie. So that will show you the caliber of how he's moved up in the industry. And that came from just 1 week in his life being involved in a filming project. So you never know how important it is to sow that seed in whatever creative art you're dealing with.
I was thinking, what teaching techniques are more effective? Look, we have Michael Jackson, Niccolo Paganini, Ludwig Beethoven. They all had wicked fathers, and they forced them to play. And in spite of this, they became great musicians of all times. And we have other technique where teacher petting child say, "Oh, just good, everything is good, and if it's not good, it's still good." So what, in your opinion, what are techniques are more effective?
The best ways is leading by example. I think that's a good key thing. And just being really dedicated as a teacher to what you are doing. Sometimes pupils have different learning styles. So for what is correct with one student may not necessarily work with someone else. So you've got to be able to be flexible in your teaching and find out how to connect with that pupil, what makes them learn and what their learning style is. And I think that's one of the key issues.
Recording a CD album is a huge job and expensive job that involves lots of different skills and tasks. What motivated you to create 2 CD albums?
Back in 2010, I wanted to share my music and just see if there was any reaction to music. Well, on the internet there was a huge reaction, some lovely comments. And I think after about a couple of years, I said, well, okay, what are we going to do with this? How are we going to take the music up to the next level? Because although we had home recordings, they were okay, but I knew the music could sound a lot more impressive. When I'm composing music, I very often hear the music in my head, completed, so I know what the track should sound like. So really when you're playing something on the piano, you know there's something missing. So the motivation really for me, for doing both of the albums, was really to take the music up to the next level and to improve the music. And I've always had this dream of hearing my music played by a full professional orchestra. So the first step towards that was going into the recording studio and laying down the piano tracks, and then getting my wonderful producer, Chris Mitchell, to work his magic on the orchestration, and initially using some sampled instrumental sounds from the orchestra, and really transforming the music from just the piano piece into something which was a lot more professional. I know when I listened to one of the pieces of music, Lost in Wonder, which concludes the first album, Eagle Mountain, the first time that I listened to Lost in Wonder in its completed form with the orchestration added on, I must confess I cried. Simply because the emotion that was in that music was suddenly released, and everything that I'd heard in my mind, suddenly I could now hear that music for real. I mean, even thinking about it now, I'm getting quite emotional about the whole thing. So it was a real transforming experience. And I learned an awful lot in that first album. Learnt new skills. I learned how to analyse the music, to listen to it really carefully, to balance things. And Chris was wonderful. Whatever I suggested to him, he agreed with, and he said, "Oh yes, I think those instruments could come down a little bit, or they need to be improved, increased a bit, or there should be horns in that section as well to make it stand out a bit more." So I learned so much in that first album, and then the second album, which was recorded roughly about 6 years after the first one. I wanted to improve on the first album, so that motivation was there to not only use the piano, the orchestra with sampled instruments, but then to introduce other real musicians to be added on. I mean, one example is really the violin. It is such an emotional instrument when it's played really properly, and there is no substitute to playing a violin on a keyboard and a real violin. There's just no comparison between the two. It just brings the whole piece alive. For a couple of tracks, we used the services of a 12-piece jazz orchestra as well. And that was a first for me, because I'd never heard a piece of my music played by other musicians, and that's a wonderful experience. It really, really was. So I guess the two albums now have formed a gradual progression. The next goal in life is to hear what has been done on the album played by a live full symphony orchestra. That will be tremendous. That will be a real wow. And I'm looking forward to that. There's been a number of people who have said, well, it's only a matter of time. Someone, sometime in the future, is going to say, yeah, we're going to play that piece of music, and it's going to be completely mind-blowing.
I believe it's the dream of any musician that his or her pieces to be performed by a big band or symphony orchestra. Yes, that's amazing. I like your dream.
Good.
Robert, please tell us, how long did it take for you to record your first studio album, Eagle Mountain?
Well, the first album, Eagle Mountain, which is this one in question, that one took, I think, probably a little over a year, I think, roughly. And it was many visits backwards and forwards to the recording studio. It was a little bit easier because it was only Chris and myself really involved in that album. So we were able to work a mutual schedule, which we were able to stick to. And probably about a year approximately. And then obviously we had to do things like produce the album cover, the artwork design, and then get the CDs actually made as well. It was a long process, and it was a process that I thoroughly enjoyed.
How long did it take for you to record the second studio album, Age of Time?
The second album, which is Edge of Time, this one took a little bit longer, mainly because other musicians were involved in the recording process. We had about a year off in between recording some of the early sessions to some of the later ones, so that delayed things a little bit. And the last section probably was again about another year, which involved a lot of editing, a lot of piecing things together. For example, the Edge of Time track was really like a massive jigsaw puzzle when it was first recorded, and eventually I pieced it together, knowing in my own mind what it should actually be like. I was then able to assist Chris in putting everything together, and in fact, once he knew the order that it all came in, it all made sense and everything fell into place. So I'm guessing really it's because it was a lot more ambitious. I think it took longer, but I think it was worth it in the end, because the quality of the album, the quality of the sound, and the quality of the compositions just again takes the music up to the next level. So what I'm going to do for the third album, if that ever comes about, I'm not really sure, but I'm always wanting to improve things, and maybe next time I may be able to use even more musicians in it and have a real life orchestra. Who knows?
How did you come up with the titles for the albums?
That's probably the hardest part of the creative process. Sometimes it's quite difficult to think up the name or title of a particular track and the album itself. Perhaps the first album, Eagle Mountain, was slightly easier because I knew I wanted to dedicate the album to my mother, who was born in the Snowdonia area of North Wales in the United Kingdom. And I knew from a bit of research that the original name of Mount Snowdon was the Mountain of the Eagles. So I used that as a basis and thought, well, what could the title be? What would be a really catchy title? And that's when I came up with Eagle Mountain. So it's really named after the Mount Snowdon and the Snowdonia area where my mother was born. So in a way, once I made that decision, it was quite easy to do that, and I'd already produced a piece of music with that title on, so it was easy to have a title track. The second album, Edge of Time, was a lot more problematical. To begin with, I knew that I wanted to have an orchestral suite at the end of it, and I had not recorded a third section. So section 1 and 2 were already composed, but the third section really needed a recording studio to make it work, because the two themes actually came together in the third piece, so it really needed a recording studio to achieve that properly. And I didn't have a title for that piece of music either. I did my research on the internet to try and look at a title. The first track, for example, on the album is Out of Time, and I thought, well, that could be possibly a title. But research showed there's already an album out with the title Out of Time. So that was out. And eventually I played around with time, end of time, all sorts of different kind of permutations. And eventually I think I hit on the idea of edge of times. I felt that, like at the moment, we seem to be very much on the edge of things, on the edge of time itself. I thought, yeah, that fits the album perfectly. So the title tracks were given that name at the end of the orchestral suite, and that's what we named the album as well. So that's how that title came about.
Many of your fans call your compositions peaceful, relaxing, and healing. How do you yourself characterize your compositions?
I look at it mainly, I think, as piano with orchestration. Of course, there isn't really technically a genre that fits that. So that's why we have to use things like classical crossover or inspirational or healing music, spiritual music. But I think, yeah, I tend to think of it really just as piano with an orchestra behind it. That's the way I view it. I know a lot of people tend to say that the music belongs in the world of film themes or TV themes because it just fits the bill really well. I can remember in my childhood, one of my interests and one of my hobbies was literally collecting theme tunes from either television programs or films. So I think I've got a huge influence from that area of music. So yeah, I think the music fits a number of those categories really. And of course, if I go into homes, then it's quite possible that I may be just using piano music on its own. Because I think that's a very powerful and emotional instrument on its own. So I'm quite happy to play on an ordinary piano, as well as alongside a full orchestra if that ever takes place in the future.
What are your favorite compositions?
My favourite pieces of music, I think for my own albums, I would go for Ira's theme as being quite high in the list. It's one that I've been playing for a number of years. It's obviously very close to my own heart because it was dedicated to my mum. So quite an emotional piece, really. I used it many years ago in the drama club that I mentioned, where I was working for 30 years as well, as a piece of seat music there as well. So it's been going for a number of years, that one. But it's a beautiful piece of music, and a lot of people just instantly ask for that one straight away as their favourite piece of music as well. I also love Lost in Wonder. That's a beautiful theme, and yeah, I just enjoy playing that one. It's quite a majestic piece, but it can also be equally gentle as well. So that's another favourite. I've got a friend of mine who every time I see him, he sort of says, "Go on, play Lost in Wonder for me." So I know it's a favourite of quite a number of people. From the new album, I think my favourite piece from Edge of Time album is probably Only Time Will Tell. Because I've gone through a lot in life, and a lot of my music is probably the result of life experiences, and that's obviously reflected in my music. Only Time Will Tell. It's quite an emotive piece, very emotional, and it has a great deal of meaning to me because when we start off in life, we have no idea where we're heading for and what we're going to be ending up as. So that title, Only Time Will Tell What We Will Become, is quite an important one for me, I think, and I hope it has some kind of meaning for other people as well. It's a beautiful melody. I know that a lot of my music tends to be very melody driven, and I just enjoy, I think, playing that music, creating it, and just sharing it with other people and blessing them with the music that I've composed.
Thank you so much for your gift, for your CD. And when I need to relax, I always turn on your CD and listen, because there's, on any mood and any condition, definitely there is music for everyone to find and enjoy it. What are your funniest moments that happened during your recording sessions?
Certainly there was quite a difficult moment when we were recording with the jazz orchestra. I had to travel to a nearby village, and on the evening that we had arranged to do all the recording, I got stuck in some roadworks because the traffic lights were at red, and in fact they stayed at red for a long time. Little did I know that some of the musicians involved in the orchestra were also stuck in the same traffic jam. So I can see the funny side of it now, but at the time it was, very scary, because we'd arranged to collect all these musicians together in one of their rehearsal rooms, and it was the only opportunity we were going to get to actually make this work. I was stuck in this queue, and the musicians were stuck in the queue, but eventually I think someone had just had the kind of the incentive to just try and run the red light and get through. And luckily, I think it was a case of safety in numbers. We all followed each other, and we all ended up in the right place at the right time.
What were your biggest challenges during the recording of the new album, The Age of Time, and how were you able to overcome those challenges?
My biggest challenge really was looking at the whole picture and bringing everything together. I knew that I wanted to include the orchestral suite at the end. I knew there were some pieces of music which had been inspired by the Unbelievers TV pilot, so some of the music was used in that. I knew that I had one or two new pieces of music, piano and orchestra, and I knew I had this kind of like jazzy pieces of music as well. And I don't really know that much about jazz music, so they were all areas which were completely new to me. So I guess the real challenge was bringing that all together into one package. And looking back on it, I don't know how I did it. I really don't, because there were times when I think only I knew what the vision was, and everyone else was just following my lead and just accepting the fact that I knew where I was going. And it was only really until the latter stages that we began to see, this really was an album, and it really was taking shape now. I think sometimes one of the difficult things also is knowing the right order that the pieces of music need to come. I think I felt for both albums, for Eagle Mountain and Edge of Time, somehow I just knew the right order that each piece should appear in. I believe that it had a shape to the whole album, and there was a progression from beginning to end. I think that's quite important when you are producing an album, that it can be played as a whole from beginning to end, or obviously you can dip in and out of it and select certain tracks as well, depending on what kind of mood you're in when you're listening to the music itself.
What are your plans for the future? Do you plan to record another music album?
I would love to. My main concern at the moment is that I've still got to pay for the second album. It was quite expensive. It was over a long period of time, which in a way was helpful because I was able to pay for the album in installments rather than in one package. We used a lot of musicians, and it became quite expensive. So we had lots of additional tracks on the album itself. So we're using more and more synthesized and sampled music. So instead of just using strings, we were introducing more woodwind, we were introducing brass, and we were introducing percussion. So there's a lot of extra layers in the new album. Future. Hopefully, over the next few years, we can reap the cost of that back through various ventures. I'm entering a new season in my life now because I have retired. I was unfortunately made redundant from my job earlier in the year due to the pandemic. But in a way, I'm not sad about that because it does give an opportunity to open new doors and to expand my creativity. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to expand my creativity in both films, television programs, and also with music, obviously. I'd love to be able to think of another album. I haven't got immediate plans, but I know, for example, at Easter, I was working on, again, another suite of music, which was based on the Easter story, which seemed to be quite powerful. That's one idea. There are other new pieces of music which are coming along all the time. So whether I perhaps go into EPs, perhaps, not quite a full album, but just extended play pieces. I certainly want to try and get more influence on the internet and to expand on the internet itself. I'm hoping that we can gain a much larger audience, but that's going to again cost money because publicising things, advertising and promoting don't come cheap. I've always said that you can have the best quality music, you can have the most wonderful music in the world, but if nobody knows that you are there, then nobody's going to be able to listen to it. It will become the world's greatest, best kept secret. So I think that's the area where I need to be focusing on, is really promoting, advertising, and getting my name out there, and finding new opportunities to share my music, which I'm sure, there will be some open doors coming along.
Do you hear music in your dreams when you sleep? And if yes, how often?
I certainly hear the music playing in my head. To be honest, I do a lot of daydreaming, so maybe that's the time that I tend to sort of hear the music. And as I sort of hinted earlier on, I tend to hear the whole piece, so it's all completely orchestrated. I can remember being in Israel on one occasion by the shores of Lake Galilee, and as we were walking down towards the lake, I think I heard the clearest that I've ever heard an orchestra playing in my mind, and it sounded almost as if the orchestra was all around me. It was a really kind of like emotional, moving experience, and certainly connected me with that particular sort of, the memory really was very strong. And I can remember on the same trip, in a coach, coming down the hill towards Nazareth, I think it was, and I had this tune playing in my mind. And eventually, from the first album, Eagle Mountain, that became the tune, The Nazarene. So it actually was composed and completed when I actually returned home and was able to pick out the melody on the piano and develop it.
What makes you happy?
I think family makes me really happy. I think that's one of the really key elements in life, to be part of a family, to be loved and be appreciated, and to have a place in life. It's so important, I think, to be in a family situation. And I know certainly that plenty of friends is important, and being able to sort of, relax with people and enjoy life, and really kind of like appreciate every single day that you are given, because none of us know really what the future holds. And I know each day, as far as I'm concerned, is a gift. So I just love kind of like, being creative, music, having a purpose in life. These are things that really make me sort of happy, I think. I love to encourage other people as well. I'm a great encourager. And one of the things that I do is to encourage sometimes young artists and people who are working towards film industry or the music industry.
Now we have plenty of huge social media platforms such as YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and most of them can make unknown musicians into big stars. Can musicians run all social media marketing themselves, or do they still have to shop around for a reasonable music manager, a producer, or a concert promoter?
To a certain extent, you can run your own programs in social media, and you can do a certain amount of promotion yourself. But I think if you want to attain a certain really sort of high level, and you want to reach a much larger audience, then I think at that stage you've got to work with other people. You've got to work with people who know how to use the algorithms on Facebook and other social media, how to how to promote yourself well, what techniques to actually use, what websites to use. And yeah, I don't think you can do the whole thing by yourself. I think you need to have some kind of a management team behind you, whether it's just someone that's booking you gigs or booking you places where you can share your music. You can't honestly be just a one-man army, I don't think, because you've either got to spend time promoting yourself or being creative. I think the two can sometimes be against each other. If you're promoting yourself a lot, I know I've found this in the past, that I've ended up realizing, hang on a minute, I've been doing all my promoting on social media, not really had time to be creative, and there's a great danger of focusing on one and not being able to do the other. So I think you've sometimes got to let go and realize you've got to work with other people. As I said earlier on, my best work, certainly with the albums, have come because I work with other people, collaboratively with other people.
What music genre could be the most popular in 10 years?
I think we could see into the future and design the next genre that's going to take the world by surprise or whatever. I think a lot of the genres that exist at the moment will probably survive in some shape or form. And I am fairly convinced that there will be completely new genres of music that we haven't even imagined at the moment. I mean, we may well be thinking in 10 years' time, I don't understand that music. I can't relate to it. It's not my thing. And yet there'll be a group of people who will think it's absolutely wonderful. I think interests in music change as culture changes. And I think, yeah, sometimes you've got to move with that. New people create new and exciting ideas, and that's not really a bad thing. I think it's great that there are new forms of music being invented all the time, and yeah, I wish them luck, and I hope they will be successful. How my music will develop in the future, again, I have no idea. I'm just kind of like on a journey, and I'm somewhere along that journey, and I haven't yet reached the end. And to be honest, it's really exciting to be on that journey, because sometimes it's quite nice not to have all the answers all at the same time. Discovering something new. I still get a thrill every time a new piece of music comes into my head and I'm able to translate it onto the piano. That thrill hasn't diminished over the years.
What advice would you give to the parents of young children who are showing musical talent?
Definitely, I would advise them to try and nurture it and to try and develop it, because you never know what the future holds for their child. It could be part of a career, it could be just maybe a hobby, but music gives you so many skills in life. And I think it helps to develop the brain as well. It gives you coordination skills, listening skills. There's a whole long list of how music is able to enhance the brain and the development of the brain. So, even if they don't use music as a career, I'm sure that it helps the development of that child and takes them further than they probably would have achieved without it. So encourage the child to engage with music, help with the enthusiasm and keep them on track. And sometimes maybe when they're finding it really a great struggle to learn or to keep up the practice, because every musician finds it difficult to practice, and you just need that daily practice. You need to be able to sort of play the music and to keep improving your skills. So encouragement is a great tool. One day, you never know, it could pay off.
Looking forward to more of your projects and to more of your wonderful music. And right now we'll be enjoyed to listen your musical pieces to share with us. Thank you so much, Robert.
It has been a real pleasure. Thanks very much.
Can you please play to us a few segments from your favorite compositions? I'm sure your audience will love to listen to your music.
I would love to do that, yes. The section I'd like to play is from Ira's theme. So, hope you like this.
Let me take you on a journey. Let me tell you the story of my music. What do you think is going through my mind when I'm composing music? When you listen to my music, what's going through your mind?
Wonderful. Yes.
Okay, the second piece I'm going to play is an extract from Lost in Wonder. Final piece is And the final piece is Only Time Will Tell.
Yes. We did it. Thank you so much, Robert, for the wonderful interview.
Of course, that's not really the end. There's more to come.